I've been with Pfizer about 8 years in their IT organization, and previous to that, I spent a lot of years with AT&T, a lot of time in this building. So I'm on the buy side now. I was on the sell side before, so I've seen both sides of the fence. And what I'd like to talk about is what my team does today and what our roadmap is for conferencing. So I'm not going to just talk about telepresence, but I'm going to talk about all the questions you guys all asked in all the previous meetings. What about my legacy stuff? I don't want to throw it away. I can't afford to throw it away. So all those complexities. And I'm not going to say that I have the perfect solution, but I'm going to explain what our thought processes were for everything that we did and we're about to execute. So we do have a presentation of the solution to our CIO tomorrow. And he did see the business case last week, and I'll tell you some critical contributions the CIO made to this business case. The biggest thing that's happened to Pfizer in the last couple of years is the fact that Lipitor is going off patent. And if you're familiar with the pharma industry, that's a huge cash cow. And the cliff date is later this year. So Pfizer needed to expand their business, and one of the aggressive things they did was they purchased Wyeth for $65 billion about 18 months ago. So we're doing an integration, and an integration is code for grab everything that company has, synergize it, and come out the other side running a cheaper, more efficient, effective infrastructure than you had from both companies going in. So really quickly, we had 1,041 video endpoints globally. So 750 with legacy Pfizer, 280 with legacy Wyeth. That was all SD and HD, and the HD we had 104 endpoints. But the problem with the HD endpoints was whenever you integrated with another SD endpoint, everything dumbed down. So you ended up going at 323, 512K. So any HD benefits were lost. We do have an investment in telepresence that we started 3 years ago. So we have, when this slide was done, we had 23 active telepresence rooms. We now have about 40 active telepresence endpoints, and they are on the AT&T exchange. And again, we still have the 104 active HD rooms, and they're located globally. But this is our roadmap. You'll notice that we have 3 parallel trains here. We have up on top our immersion solution, which is the Cisco telepresence. Started out with a couple of endpoints, has grown to about 30 endpoints, but there's no interoperability with any of the other infrastructure. Our legacy SD and a little bit of HD infrastructure, 1,000 Polycom H323 rooms, but later on this year we will be upgrading the 104, we'll be retaining the 104 HD rooms that we have today, mostly Polycom HDXs, and we will be buying Tandberg P52s, P42s, and upgrading about 120 of the legacy SD rooms, which had the most use over the last 19 months. And then we're going to sunset 700 rooms that nobody has walked into to use for a video call in 2 years. It's embarrassing. And I wasn't in charge of video architecture or strategy for the previous 5 or 6 years, and I would always walk into a room, see a bunch of cables on the floor, a 4x3 tube, duplicate audio infrastructure on a table, and video equipment that was never being used. So we had done a very poor job in our previous rollout of effectively deploying and using video services. So we're going to change that. Now, on the bottom, you'll see desktop. So we're a WebEx shop today, but you also notice that we're looking at the evil Microsoft organization to see what OCS is going to do. So we're looking at OCS potentially, because voice eventually is going to software as a service, whether it's OCS, whether it's Cisco Call Manager with Unified Compute Platform, but we're going to voice software as a service, and we'll have to integrate into desktop video and the video infrastructure overall. So what's our barriers to acceptance today? Nobody has ever come out of an SD call and said, boy, that's the greatest SD call I've ever had. It just shook me. I think the biggest problem with SD calls is that people feel a little bit guilty about doing email and being witnessed to doing email, but you really can't see their facial expressions. So there's no benefit from the facial expressions, but somebody can tell when you're not paying attention. So that was the upside or the best benefits of SD. Oh my God, it is so difficult to schedule an SD or an HD or a TP room inside of Pfizer. It's just a complete barrier to usage. And if you are a regular user of it, there's an engineer that shows up and connects all the wires and makes sure you're using the right microphones and makes sure that all the endpoints are up. And 15 minutes later, your meeting starts. You know, that's a bad barrier to usability. And we don't have any interoperability today. Our TP rooms talk to our TP rooms. HDs and SDs talk to each other at the lowest common denominator of 323 at 512. And then I got 700 rooms that nobody has walked into to do a video call in 2 years. So the beauty of this is this is so obvious. The business case is actually pretty simple. So we're going in to fix years of bad behaviors.
Why are your telepresence rooms not interoperable with the video conferencing rooms?
Well, I'm going to talk about that in a second, but when we started this business case, there was no roadmap for them to talk to each other, talk to the other technologies. They could only talk to themselves and the business exchange on AT&T. So there was the AT&T did not have the initial RadVision bridge as a service yet. When we started this business case, they do now, and they are going towards the MSE, which we're also looking at now. But I'll talk about the solution in a second.
So when you bought those telepresence systems, did you expect them to interoperate, or did you buy them with the assumption that they wouldn't?
So there was some politics going on, and the people.
Oh, that's a surprise.
Yeah. So the people that were actually pushing IT to invest in telepresence were just hoping to drive the person who was in charge of video out of business. So this was an end around from, God, you do an awful job. Can we bring in a real solution? And luckily, we were able to bring the teams together. The person who was in charge of it before isn't with us anymore. So we're turning this around. Now, in order to make this happen, our service roadmap, we did a traffic study of all of our rooms to see what rooms are being used. And we figured out how much money we had in integration, and we could afford to upgrade 120 SD rooms to Tandberg P52s or P42s. We are going to do Outlook integration, or we will fail. If we don't make it easier for our clients to actually reserve meetings and then attend meetings, either one touch or zero touch, this will fail. So that bullet right there for Outlook integration is the most critical success factor, and that's the one I'm pushing the hardest on. It looks pretty inconsequential, but if people can't easily use it, this is just going to be another pile of video gear that doesn't get used. We're looking at integrating our operational teams. We have one company that runs our telepresence. We have another company that runs our operations. We have a third company that does break fix. We think we can get some economies of scale. We took over the corporate funding of the WebEx. Instead of making conferencing pay-as-you-go, we took it in. We could save money over the previous web conferencing tool, funded it ourselves, and we're driving up usage of that. And people are buying $40 and $50 Logitech cameras and having desktop video, complaining about the little screen, but the next version of WebEx, if you haven't seen it, you got to go take a look at it. It's much better. And it's not bad on bandwidth. So we didn't have a huge network upgrade to do in order to deliver WebEx. And we're going to decommission the unused rooms. We're going to donate a bunch of 4x3 tubes and a bunch of codecs to schools. I'm hoping they can use it. But we're getting that stuff out of our infrastructure, turning them back to regular conference rooms, and cleaning up the mess of our legacy SD endpoints.
So you're going to go from over 1,000 rooms with the two companies down to about 400?
Yes.
Telepresence?
Yep.
And that's 120,000 employees, or are they
Yeah, exactly. That's the target head count. Now, I missed one button up there on the upgrade 120 high traffic rooms to HD. We're going to ask the business, hey, your traffic showed that you had X amount of meetings between these rooms over the past 18 months. Are these sites still key to you? Do you still want to have a bunch of rooms in EMEA, or is your business growing in Asia Pac and we can put something in Korea to make you more effective? So we're looking for business buy-in to validate our site list. So that's a really key thing. We're going to get input, we got buy-in from the business and ease of use for the customers. Then the rest of it hopefully will be piece of cake. These are our conferencing tiers. This is how we communicate to our clients on what the services are. Telepresence, dedicated infrastructure, professional every time. We allow our business units to fund their own rooms. We seeded about 30. Now the business is ponying up money for their own rooms. HD, those are the 120 that we're going to build. The SDs we're going to sunset, and desktop WebEx, looking towards voice and video software as a service 18 months to 2 years down the road. Skype is in our future. It's coming. Go ahead.
On the desktop, are your workers requesting desktop video conferencing, or is this being pushed down? Is it a push or pull?
So the business driver is Pfizer has got a huge R&D organization, but if you look at our successes in the marketplace, we've had more successes from acquisitions and partnering with external companies than we have with our own R&D organization. So we have a huge business model that says go partner with everybody. And the ACD team, so that's an M&R, acquisitions, collaborations, and divestitures, came to us and said, I need on-the-fly video. Well, I can get you an SD conference room with maybe a 24-hour reservation SLA. And they're like, no, that's not going to work. So they went out and did Adobe Connect. And I had tons of training organizations, and I had tons of internal teams inside of Pfizer that needed to partner with external firms, and they just went rogue. They went on their own. So about 2 years ago, we started a business case to look at who are the players in desktop video, and WebEx came out on top. And luckily, telepresence ended up being a very strategic investment for us. And then they bought Tandberg, so now I have a complete Cisco solution, which has got upsides, but it's also got horrible downsides. So, be careful who you get in bed with. You get some benefits from the same house, but then you are hostage when they don't make the changes you need to be successful.
So where do you see Skype then?
Well, Skype, this is the world according to Mirril. Skype is owned by the same private equity firm that owns Avaya. And as soon as they figure out how to behave in a way that corporate America will support them, Skype and all the other software as a service vendors in the sky are just going to swoop down, and it's going to take one Fortune 10 company to say, I'm going with Skype, or I'm going with Google, or I'm going with Microsoft, and there's just going to be a whoosh of all of corporate America going towards these services for desktop video and voice software as a service. And I think that's going to be blessed within 18 months. But in the meantime, I'm following my good corporate architecture roadmap that says, we will only go with the blue blood corporate security aligned, compliance aligned service providers and the internal solutions that meet those requirements. But when one big firm like an AT&T or a BT all of a sudden partners with Skype and the world buys into it, that there's going to be a paradigm shift. So be ready for that. So I'm preparing for that. That's what I think is going to happen, but I'm building this in the meantime. So in order to do the business case, we took a look at all the video calls and split them by region, and then in each city, what percentage of video calls were made, and then identified them by business unit. So when we go to present the business case to the BU leaders, I can say PGRD, so that's Pfizer Global R&D. You use 37% of the video infrastructure between X amount of cities. You're a big customer of ours. Can I improve your service? And what cities are important to you? But if you don't go to the business and know how they're using your services, they're going to look at you and say, why are you talking to me? So this was important information for the business case. And then overlay that with your travel routes information. So domestically, I had no idea the most expensive travel route in the US for Pfizer was New York to Dallas-Fort Worth. We don't have anything in Dallas-Fort Worth. But there must be something going back and forth from Dallas-Fort Worth that requires a lot of trips. So maybe there's an external firm there that I'm not aware of. But those are good numbers. So I just need to make sure our room usage aligns with our city flight usage. And then if you take a look at the international travel routes, those are numbers that we can take to our CIO and say, if we invest in this and map this usage to these city pairs for travel, we have a potential to save money for the company. Now, I did not make an explicit statement. I made an implied statement. But we took the numbers, the travel numbers, up to our CIO, and you guys are going to love this, and asked him, well, what do you think? If we do a bunch of this and we spend this much money on travel, how much do you think we'll save? And he said, well, how much money will it save if we do 1% improvement in travel dollars? Well, you'll still be upside down about 50 grand. He goes, how about 2%? Well, you about break even, 3%. Well, we're going to be up $50,000 a month in operating expenses. He said, put it in the business case. So I didn't have if I said that, who am I? I'm nobody. But give the information to your management and let them make the decision to put it in the business case. I think we can save 3% in travel. I think that's a conservative number. And, we wanted to develop our own model to figure this out. We talked to GE, we talked to AT&T Corporate, we talked to Pepsi, we talked to Microsoft and said, how'd you build your business case for travel money saves enough money to pay for video infrastructure? And nobody had the silver bullet. But they did measure it, but it was kind of like, well, we think we'll save this and we'll think we'll do that, but we have to have good measurements, and they put good measurements, and 12 months later, they had numbers they could show their management to go back and say, we saved X, can we buy 5 more rooms? And upper management didn't argue with it, but it's that initial business case to get you through the window, which is really critical. And we learned from those other corporations, we learned from our own experience, we took a look at the usability of our infrastructure, and we took the business requirements of 2 companies merging together. But by the way, when you take 2 global companies, nobody writes the check to move them all to the same campus. You all got to learn how to get along with the telephony, email, conferencing services, and video conferencing immersion is a huge business enabler if you put it in the right places and you can quantify it to upper management. Yeah, we need to spend this money because it's going to pay off for us in long term. So we do a demo to our CIO tomorrow. He's already seen the business case, and the business case goes in for review on Thursday. And this is about to do the 120 rooms and to do a lot of Cisco infrastructure in our global data centers, 3 hubs. It's about $9 million. And our CIO is saying, I can pay for that in 3% of travel. So we're looking forward to building out a pretty dynamic infrastructure inside of Pfizer. Questions? Go ahead.
Those travel dollars you showed, are those controlled by multiple budget offices, or is there a single travel responsibility?
There are multiple budget offices, but they all get tracked through one corporation. So we can report them for the firm, and the CFO thinks he's in charge of that money. So he's very confident that he can tell people what to do with their travel dollars.
So could he save 3% by just making an edict?
Yes.
Next year's budget will be 3% less, not spend a penny on video conferencing?
Yeah, he could do that. He's about enablers, though. So he's also an ex-telecom guy. The CFO is the ex-CFO from Lucent. So he went through 2 really ugly restructuring inside of Lucent That's Frank D'Amelio, for those who are familiar with the Lucent history. So he is receptive to this. And he wants to spend money to save money. So it's not like I don't want to spend any money and constrict the company. I want to spend money to save money. So if we give him a good business case, he will support it. I'm not saying every CFO will do that, though.
What is your
So Pfizer is basically, if it's positive, it's good. And if you can, and the rules for our integration is our capital seed money. Bring me a business case, I'll give you integration dollars. They want to see a 5-year break even. So it's pretty liberal. So the ROI is just going to be positive and a 5-year break even. If you can bring that in, they'll support you on it. We have a lot of capital.